I just want to talk a little bit right now about races. And if you've ever ran a race before, you would know that running a race just isn't easy, and that it takes a lot of hard work and effort just to make it to the finish line. And so I have a story about my first race, and that was in the 3rd grade. And to get qualified for this race, you had to run a mile in under 8 minutes. And so finally I was able to run it under 8 minutes, and I was qualified for the race. Well, in preparation for it, my dad just coached me along, and after school we would just run. And so, when race day came, I was ready, and we started at the finish line. And, the main point in a race is to get from the starting line to the finish line and endure in this part right here. And so, I did exactly that. In the first lap, you're doing pretty good. Second lap, you're getting kind of tired. And then the third lap, you're really tired. The fourth lap, you're just barely hanging on. And so that's exactly what I was doing. And during this race, I had to endure. And so finally I made it to the finish line. And it's always just so comforting when you make it to the finish line, because you realize that you just ran all this, and you can look back and say, man, that was a good race. And so, I say all that to compare this race to life. And that, there are times when we really just feel like even quitting, but we just got to keep on going, and we got to keep on enduring. So I want to look at Hebrews chapter 12, and I want to look at verse 1. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1. Verse 1 says, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us." So it starts off by saying that we're surrounded by many people, and then it goes on to say, let us lay aside, let us get rid of or put away sin that weighs us down and that easily besets us. That word beset, it means to trouble us. It troubles us, it afflicts us on all sides. And so, and it goes on to say, let us endure, and then it says run with patience, or perseverance, the race or the trial that is put before us. And so in this verse, there are two main things that it's really talking about. And it says to put away sin that weighs us down or that burdens us. So, in a race, if I have something that's burdening me and that's loading me down, it's going to be a lot harder to run, and I probably won't even make it to the finish line nearly as effectively, or maybe even not even make it to the finish line. But it says here to lay it aside, put it away. Now I can run that race a lot more effectively. And so, I think about in the Olympics, you never see anybody wearing a backpack. Why? Because it weighs them down. So, we need to, and then it goes on to say, we should endure or stand strong during life's trials. Verse 2 says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. So, while we are running this race, we need to look to Jesus. It says, who's the beginning and ending, or the starting line and finish line of our faith. And so, looking to Jesus is this idea of putting our focus or attention on him. In doing so, that'll help us to get to that finish line and to run this race. And so, it goes on to say that Jesus had to endure the cross. And when we think about that, he was whipped, he was tortured and crucified, and even, it just went through excruciating pain just for us. I say that just to describe just how much he had to suffer and go through for us. And then it goes on to say that Jesus is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. This makes Jesus equal with God. So as we run this race called life, we need to look to Jesus and put our focus on him. So verse 3 says, "For consider him that endured such contradiction." Think about him, of sinners, against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. So think about Jesus that, experienced this extreme opposition of sinners. And it says lest, or, if not, then we'll be weary and exhausted in our minds. And it talks in this verse also about fainting. Fainting is just a loss of consciousness. So in this context, we can think about it as almost quitting the race. And when we do that, if we faint, we're never going to make it to the finish line. And so we need to endure. And so we're called to run an endurance race, and we can't faint. So I don't know about you, but I want to make it to that finish line. If you will look at at Revelation 21, verse 7. Revelation 21 and verse 7 says, "He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son." So it's saying to the person that endures, that overcomes, it says that he shall inherit all things. It's an amazing thought to know that we are and will be heirs of God. And, what an amazing finish line that we have to look forward to. So just to review what we talked about, run the race and endure during difficult times, put away or get rid of sin that weighs us down, and as you run this race, look to Jesus. And, we got to remember, too, that we're not running this race alone and that he's right there with us. And so God is telling us to endure life's trials by looking to Jesus so that we don't faint. So maybe you're here tonight and you're going through something. I just want to encourage you to look to Jesus and endure.